Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to share with you what we think are some of the biggest lessons that you could have, should have, and can learn during 2021. As usual, none of what we share here should constitute as financial advice. If you want financial advice or investment advice, please speak to a professional.
Okay guys, if you are interested in building a 6 to 7 figure stock portfolio, you can check out our free training link in the description and in the comments.
Okay, so the first lesson, no surprise, has to do with Top Glove. The share price is down something like what?
60-70%.
From the high, right?
Yeah, from the high of like around 9 ringgit.
Yeah,
about 2.
And you know, this year is obviously a painful year for a lot of Top Glove investors. And people got into Top Glove because it was undervalued, you know, all this cash flow and all this cash.
Yeah.
Because during COVID, they did well in business. And so they got into it. But then the selling pressure kept going on, right? People still kept dumping Top Glove. Even after Tan Sri's, like, in a way, assured the market by buying more shares. That didn't really help. And I'll get to I want to know what you think later on. But for me, the big issue is that the future, we know, is not going to be as good as during COVID.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not a bad future. It's just not going to be as good because COVID was just a once-off event, right?
Yep.
And for some reason, people was taking the past and then still going, you know, looking into the future. And even the people who made discounts to that future also got caught, because even if let's say the PE is like what, 3 or 4,
yeah,
then the thinking is like, oh, if it halves, it's still 8 or 10, right? Now, the important thing I think to understand about Top Glove is that your analysis can be right, but that doesn't mean that the price will agree with you immediately, right? Sometimes you may have to wait 2 to 3 years before then it bounces back up hard again.
Yeah.
And the question is, are you willing to wait for 3 years? If you are, then it doesn't mean that what you have now, even if it's down 50%, is a bad decision. In fact, if you do believe over the next 5 to 10 years you will bounce back up, you should be actually buying more and ignoring the noise. But if you feel that you have better opportunities, then certainly Top Glove may not be for you, or at least you put it, you know, a KIV list, right? But what do you think?
I think Top Glove, this is a lesson that I learned from investing in this company, is that it actually humbles me down.
Really?
Yeah. And initially I was so overconfident. For a disclaimer, I do own Top Glove previously when it was at, I think I owned it in 2019. And then I held it all the way to 2021, beginning of 2021.
Right.
So I actually go through the high and the lows.
But you should be up, right, when you sold it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, if you bought it in 2019.
Yeah, correct. So, yeah, but definitely it makes me, how to say? It makes me not to be too overconfident with the company that I invested in, because I do know that oversupply may occur because of all the new entrants that is popping up, right? So my initial conviction is that they still have time to run, more legs to run in the next 2021 or 2022. That was my initial verdict in 2020. Right. Yeah, but sad to be true, I was wrong in a way. Yeah, and it's definitely a good lesson to learn also about the importance of ESG.
Yes.
Yeah, in a way. Later we're gonna
we'll talk about ESG a little bit
ESG
more,
again.
Right?
Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah, and also nothing much to add on. It's just that it is what it is. Yep.
Okay, so this next one I think is quite familiar to everybody, right? Almost too familiar, and that's Serbadk. Now, the lesson with Serbadk is very old lesson actually.
Yeah. But
people still forget because of hype, because of news, because of what their friends say and all that. And that has to do with the importance of cash flow over profit. It's something that we mention too often for our liking, because it's a very basic point. At the end of the day, accounting profits does not result in what we call economic profits, meaning which is real cash, right?
Yes.
And so the Serbadk had that problem So you could just analyze Serbadk. For those of you who don't know, right, Serbadk is involved in the oil and gas sector. They're in the maintenance part of the oil and gas sector, which then started doing what we call EPCC related businesses, which is basically construction, but on a very big scale. And
they plan to diverse into space.
Yeah, I went to space. I remember they were doing something under the ocean or underground.
Yeah, correct. Underground. Right? So from
underground up in the sky. Space. So yeah, but before I go there, I think you could look at that, and Serbadk has done very poorly. The shares have been suspended.
Yep.
And with Serbadk, you could analyze it on one level, and it's enough, which is that the profits does not match the cash flow straight away already. But several things you also have to take note of is that when they shifted into all these weird, unrelated areas of business, that is another red flag. But even within, let's say they were doing maintenance work, right, for oil and gas companies, and that's important, but it's a very basic kind of job, right? But suddenly when they do like EPCC, which is a very complicated, has a lot of resources involved and things like that, and then doing it in the Middle East, which is a big chunk of where their revenue came from. They book their revenue. Then you see this sort of problem, right? Because how can someone jump from, let's say, it is the same as almost the equivalent, right, of someone a repairman or a repairman for an iPhone suddenly want to start building iPhones, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's definitely possible, but it's you have to be a bit more skeptical, right? When you see them shift suddenly to go from something relatively straightforward to something very complicated, you need to be able to ask yourself, right? Do they have the expertise historically when they shifted business model? But what's your thoughts?
For me, it is more actually when you look at Serbadk's financials, the quantitative side of business, you already can tell that this business is not really performing like it's not behaving like an oil and gas company. So why do I say this is that in my previous video, by the way, if you followed me on my previous channel, not an analyst, I actually talked about Serbadk, but unfortunately it got taken down. But I won't go into perspective. Basically, what I have found is that I have been comparing Serbadk and two of their competitors, which is one of them is Petra.
Yep.
And another, I think, is Dayang. Yeah. But they are not really direct competitors, but indirect.
They are closest compared to the rest.
Yeah, correct. So when you look at all three of these companies together, right, you notice that Dayang and Petra is actually behaving more like an oil and gas company because there's like an up and down cycle. Whereas for Serbadk, it looks very, very linear growth. It's like the oil and gas industry doesn't really affect their business at all. Yeah, but in some cases it's true because they are in the maintenance and service. So maybe that is one of the reasons why they can have such a linear growth in their financials. But if you take a look at their cash flow wise, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and not to mention that this is a company that has been raising a lot of funds from shareholders and from also the equity market and also from the both banks. So yeah, it is actually pretty sad to see Serbadk been performing like this, but we hope that they can eventually solve this issue and turn over a new leaf. By the way, guys, if you need another opinion on your stock analysis, you can actually email your research to us. However, it must be in a Google Doc or Google Sheet format, and it must not only include about the financials of the company. Please do tell us about their business qualitatives, what are the drivers moving forward, as well as your valuation about the company.
Okay, so Jonathan, we move on to the next one. This is Genetec, right? I think the best performing stock.
Yeah, man.
Over the past year.
If you bought it like around, I think it was around RM1 range, but then it like 15x or 16x.
Beautiful, man.
Yeah.
And the lesson here, I mean, disclaimer, we don't own any of the shares that we're going to mention here.
Yeah, sad.
But with Genetec, the big lesson here is to not be over-reliant on the financials, right?
Yeah.
Because if you look at the financials before the run-up, and in fact, to a certain extent, still today, right?
Yeah, their financials weren't really performing as well as compared to previous. Actually, in fact, it's getting worse.
Yeah. So
So
if you rely too much on it, you will have missed this, right?
Yeah.
The best performing stock of 2021. And that is the big lesson. Now the question is then what do you rely on, right? I think the big one was the fact that they were involved in electric vehicles. Now I know some of you are looking and say, yeah, now with the benefit of hindsight, you can say that. And I think that's half true. Yes, of course, with the benefit of hindsight, Genetec has done well, right? It could have been the case that
it done poorly.
Yeah, it done poorly, and it was involved in, even though it was involved in electric vehicles, there's no guarantee that it will do well. But the key thing here is that when you analyze the stock, you want to have something that we guide a lot of our students and clients, right? A checklist, a process.
Yes.
And this process will include things like the qualitatives, the management, the financials, the valuation, and all that. Now, the problem with most people and investors, I realize, not most, a lot, right, is that they want the stars to line up.
Yep.
So they want every criteria to be a green or a tick, to be good.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case. Because if you look at Genetec, you know that at least, for the sake of simplicity, let's just look at two factors, right? The qualitative and the quantitative. In terms of qualitative, it's good because they are involved in electric vehicles, right? But then the financials not showing up. So as an investor, you have an option, right? You can say, I only want to invest in company with good financials, good qualitative, all that. Or you can lower the barriers to getting an investment by saying, hey, I understand that the financials might not be good, but why not give it a go because the story is great. Now, the story might end up crumbling, might not be true, but it could be true.
Yep.
And the upside, especially for a lot of these stocks, right, that really have that, that are in all these riskier so-called industries, is very high, right? Because if they succeed, it goes up.
I think this is something like Tesla. Back in 2018 or 2019, where they almost went bankrupt. There's actually a point that because they cannot really perform the sales and whatnot, but the story is still there. We have Elon Musk pumping up his company. It's like tweeting about how great his company will become. And in fact, it became true in 2020 and 2021 when they first seized their first ever profit, quarterly profits. And that actually changes everything. And
I think this is a great lesson because it's like investing is not just about is it buy or is it sell. It's also like how much you buy and how much you sell. So for example, if you think that if you really like the story, and I know a lot of very good investors that say the same, but it's all story, there's no numbers, right? But sometimes you also have to consider, right, once the numbers come out,
then
right? I mean, Top Glove is a good example, right? The numbers came out, but when the numbers came out, it got worse, Right? So it gives you a sense that, the market is forward-looking, right? It's not, at least in the short term, definitely. It's very forward-looking, and you have to recognize that. And that's, for me, the biggest lesson for Genetec. If you enjoyed the video so far, remember to give it a like. Comment down below, what do you think of the video? Do you agree with some of the findings, our findings and lessons about 2021? And of course, if this sort of content is something that you like or your friends like, please share it with them so that more people can watch the video. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell so that you know when fresh videos come up. All right, our final lesson before we move on to the question of the week is ATA IMS. Actually, just how do you pronounce it? Some people pronounce it ataims.
Oh,
it's ATA IMS.
ATA. For me, it's ATA IMS.
So anyway, for those of you who don't know, I think we had a previous video about this. Long to short, right? ATA IMS used to be a supplier to Dyson, right? Dyson, I think, is like top of the range sort of household appliance stuff, your hair dryers, fans, things like that. And they lost the contract, right, with Dyson. And the reason, not entirely, but a big chunk.
Definitely a big chunk.
Certainly enough to cause a crash essentially in the stock price. And why did it happen, right? It happened because there were certain queries about their labor practices. And Dyson is an international company, so it's very concerned with the kind of suppliers that they work with, right? They want to make sure that at least the suppliers that they work with are fair and whatnot. And in their judgment, right, Atta IMS was not being fair to some of the employees, things like dragging payments and whatnot. And what is the lesson here, right? The lesson here is that I think what is very new in the past 1 or 2 years is the introduction of ESG. Well, ESG wasn't introduced during 2020 or 2021. Yeah. What I'm trying to say is that it got introduced into the market as a relevant factor.
Yeah.
And that it can affect share prices, it can affect fundamentals.
Do you think that ESG should be part of your criteria or checklist when analyzing companies?
I think my view has always been, I think any company needs to be virtuous regardless of the law. I think that even if the law is not there, you should be behaving in the right way regardless.
Yeah.
So the question is, I'm not involved in the legal part of things, so I don't know whether what Dyson says is true or not. That's not what I'm saying. But let's say Atta IMS was right, and or was wrong in terms of the labor practices, in terms of delaying payments, sometimes by, I'm not sure, by many months, right?
Yeah.
Many months.
Many months, yeah.
Well, why do you need a law to do that, right? If you think from a business perspective, you want to be as virtuous as you can, and you want to do the right thing so that you can attract the kind of talent that you should be attracting. So, okay. And regardless whether you attract the talent or not, you should be paying, people on time, essentially. And even if you delay, make sure it's a good reason, right?
Yes.
So I think that ESG, it's a law, right? It's there to enforce something, to make sure that you don't behave in the worst possible manner. But the question is to you as a business, right? Why would you even consider behaving in the worst possible manner? Why do you need a law to tell you, right, that you should be paying people on time? But that's more on the social or the governance side of things.
Yeah,
of course,
definitely.
ESG is a lot bigger. There's the environment and all that. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you just said. It's more towards of governing. How do I say? It's like we don't want to go through the path of slavery.
Yeah.
Yeah. We also want to compensate every employees and workers on time, and also make sure that their well-being is being taken care of. But actually, I do have a questions about this. Since we are in the ESG topic, right? What is your opinion on Adam Halls? Yeah, it seems that he's like the reverse of the hand of Midas,
Yeah.
This one is like whatever company he inspect, the company share price will fall.
Yeah. Look, I think, I've not done too much research on him, but the general idea is that we do need watchdogs, right? Essentially in the industry, we do need people to say, we think that we have problems.
Yeah.
And what I hope for the industry as a whole, not just for people like Adam Hall, is that, we want more people like Adam Hall, like calling people out.
Yeah.
But what I also would like to see are companies actually coming forth and
practicing.
Right, like for
the right
example,
way.
when remember when the US was saying Top Glove cannot.
Yeah.
Top Glove came out and they just shared, we think it's incorrect, whatever,
Yeah.
the assessment. So all these companies should be coming out and saying, let's say because with Andy Hall, right, he could be doing the right thing in calling people, or he could be just using his podium essentially to, bring companies down or make himself feel good, right? And as a company, you need to be able to look inwards and say like, okay, are you actually treating these people carefully? Yeah. And then that's why with people like Andy Hall is good, because at the end of the day, I think he's going to up all the games of the people like SK Press or the other EMS players, right?
Yep.
He's going to improve them, and he's going to realize that communication is very important. Even though you can say that, Dyson is the most important person you need to communicate to, but the minute Dyson sees something wrong like that, right, they're gonna communicate to you, and that communication is sorry, no more, right?
Yeah.
So you should be communicating with shareholders, with regulators, people like Andy Hall a lot more to state your position. For example, you use foreign labor, right, and say like, look, I'm doing this in accordance to the law of the land, and I also treat my workers well, and here are the reasons, right? We're not all, and then we're not perfect. We still have ways to go, but certainly it's not our intention to do any of this.
Yeah.
And of course, because we, to be fair, Malaysia does have Malaysian companies do have a reputation of mistreating, not all, of course, but mistreating foreign workers. So I think it's great that people like Andy Hall are coming in.
Yep.
Okay, so this week's question is from Instagram. Jonathan asks, he's working 9 to 10 daily, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., right?
Wow.
Yeah, well, no, obviously it's 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., right? How to allocate time for research. Now, I think that the question here is not detailed enough, but I'll try my best to answer. I think the first thing is if you're doing 9 to 10, then it's going to be very difficult for you to actually put in research. And my recommendation would be to be very selective, to have a framework, one that we teach, in our courses. But more importantly is that you want to have a very simple checklist.
Yep.
So basically when you buy a stock, right, it's a half an hour decision. Now, I'm not saying that you should make investments based on half an hour research, but because of your condition, and since you do want to invest and research a little bit about companies, you have to realize you have that limitation.
Yeah.
Which means that you only have so much time. Based on what you're saying, right? If you're working from 9 to 10, right? Like you get home by 11, and assuming you sleep at 12 or 1, let's say, right? You need to have like 1 hour of research, really.
Yeah.
And so what do you do in that situation? Well, you need to have this checklist where it's very simplified and it's very straightforward and very simple. It's not going to be far from perfect. It's not going to be comprehensive, but you got to have one of them. Then when you invest, right, based on your situation, because you cannot commit a lot of time, you should be a lot more diversified.
Yeah.
You should buy a company that says that I think in 5 years, it's going to be very good.
Yeah.
Things can change, news happens all the time, but because you don't have the time, you're okay with buying it and let it run for 5 years. But because you're only putting a little bit of money, because you're a bit more diversified, then, whatever negative outcomes will be a lot lesser and a lot less impactful to your portfolio. Now, that's one way of answering. That's why the second way is, that's why I would like to know more about your actual condition. Why are you working like 9 to 10? Like, what is it you need? Is it because the job demands it? I don't know. I can't really give much. But what I would say is to find a bit more balance, right? If stock investing is what you want to do a little bit more, then obviously something's got to go.
Yep.
And, it's not going to be lunch or sleep for sure. Yeah. So perhaps some sort of organization, right, within your company, or maybe you're a business owner, to scale down a little bit and actually focus more on research.
Personally, I feel that if it's the things that I like to do, I'll definitely find time and make time for it. So time management is pretty important. Yeah. If you find research like it's the things that you like to do and you don't find it like a chore, anyhow also you definitely find time.
But that's the interesting bit, right? That's the thing, because there's not enough information.
Yeah.
Because but what if he needs a job and his family to feed or whatever? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But you're right in that if, let's say, assuming Jonathan, if you're listening to this, is that, let's say if you don't have all these limitations, and that the reason you're working 9 to 10 is because you want to work 9 to 10, then I think the answer is pretty clear, which is what you said, right? Yeah. You'll find a way.
Yeah. Okay, guys, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this video today. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to watch more contents like this. And also, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, and also we have a Discord channel. So make sure to check them out. Link in the description and comments.